Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here, joining you once again on a Thursday to continue to cover the depthy history of the Street Fighter franchise. In the last few videos we have been focused on the Capcom Versus games. However, another series of fighters that was being released around the same period was the Street Fighter EX games, the world's first Street Fighter games to include 3D polygons. Last month we looked at the first game in the series, so today we are going to look at the second installment from within this sub-franchise. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Street Fighter Ex2 and why no one plays it anymore. Yeah. But first, a quick word about our sponsor. Raid Shadow Legends is a turn-based RPG done right. In case you've been living under a rock in the last couple of months, Raid is the sensation of the mobile gaming world. The RPG that changed everything. The game is crazy popular, almost 15 million downloads in the last 6 months. So what is Raid? It's an epic dark fantasy done right. A hero collection turn-based game with over 400 champions for you to collect and personally customise. In Raid you can assemble a team of 16 heroic factions, explore 1 million plus champion builds, enjoy a fully voiced story campaign and claim glory in a PvP arena. And the best part? It is free to play. There are even extra cool features such as multi-battle auto mode that sets battles to run while you go do something else, which means you can spend less time grinding and more time doing fun stuff. As you all know, I spend a lot of time playing old handheld games, however Raid has a large amount of strategy, depth and tactics to it. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. There are also weekly tournaments and events which include fighting in the arena, running special dungeons, or just leveling up your heroes. You can win extra prizes every week. The game is growing super fast, and check out this cool roadmap that they've published. They actually have huge plans for updates in the game for over 6 months, so there is infinite content for you to enjoy. Recent updates include a new faction, a tag team arena feature, a new clan boss, and you will even be able to fight with your clan mates. You can find me in the game under the nickname Top Hat Gaming Man, and if you're quick enough you can also join my clan. So what are you waiting for? Go to the video description, click on the special link and you will get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey. Yeah! Now moving back to my Street Fighter story, the year is 1998. It is another busy year for Capcom, especially for the Street Fighter franchise. June of that year would see the release of Street Fighter Alpha 3, the most polished Street Fighter Alpha game of the 90s, featuring an expanded roster. But prior to that, in January, Marvel vs Capcom Clash of the Superheroes would too see a release. The game where the Street Fighter cast would compete alongside other Capcom characters against the greater Marvel universe. Both of these games are well remembered and extremely celebrated today. Street Fighter Alpha 3 brought the Alpha series to a 90s climax, whereas Marvel vs Capcom was the most ambitious chaotic crossover fighting game the world had ever seen. Street Fighter Ex2 is obviously the sequel to Street Fighter EX, the first ever Street Fighter game to feature 3D polygon graphics as opposed to the usual 2D sprites. The game from 1996 was released and developed by a company known as Eureka, which was owned by Akira Nishitani, one of the many men who worked on Street Fighter 2, who even designed many of the game's characters. Capcom reportedly outsourced the original game to Eureka due to not having the resources for being able to create their own polygon-based Street Fighter title at the time. This would include Capcom's arcade hardware itself, which was designed to run games that featured 2D sprite-based games. Due to this, Street Fighter EX would run off of the Sony ZN hardware, an arcade board that had components similar to the Sony PlayStation. Street Fighter Ex2, on the other hand, published 2 years later, in 1998, would run off of the more powerful Sony ZN2 hardware. So was this enough to result in a more impressive experience? Let us find out. Time to look at this game's intro.
Street Fighter EX2.
Straight away from the game's intro, you can tell that graphically, the polygons look a lot less blocky this time, which is one positive to note instantaneously. The intro also shows off some of the characters who have never been in EX games before. In typical Street Fighter fashion, the first Street Fighter EX game had multiple upgrades in its own right. We had Street Fighter EX in the arcade, followed by Street Fighter EX Plus, an arcade upgrade, finally followed by Street Fighter EX Plus A. The biggest changes these upgrades would introduce would be expanding the game's character roster. The first game starts out with 10 characters on the player select screen, joined by 4 unlockables, and by the game's final upgrade the roster would include a total of 23 playable characters. The true second installment in the Street Fighter EX series would let you start off the game with 16 characters on the player select screen. The game's initial roster features many characters from the original EX roster, which featured a combination of characters from Street Fighter 2 alongside brand new characters that Arika had developed in-house. Some of these were pretty memorable too, such as if you've played this game, who doesn't love Skullomania for example? Characters who are new to the EX series include some arrivals from the Capcom Street Fighter franchise. In this game's case, both Blanca and Vega, who are also both featured in the game's introductory scene. The player select screen also features 2 brand spanking new characters. These include Sharon, who is a gun-wielding hitwoman, and Hayate, a Japanese swordsman. In terms of this game's hidden characters, both Garuda and Kairi from the original game appear as unlockables. However, in terms of hidden fighters, there are also some more completely new characters in this department. These include Shadowgeist, a costume vigilante who is very similar to the lovable Skullomania, and Nanasi, a young girl who wields a staff. There is also a 5th hidden character, however, they are only accessible by using a cheat code. This final character is Cycloid, who resembles Cycloid Beta from the previous game in the series. In terms of the game itself, like the game's predecessor, the game is a versus fighter that pretty much follows the traditional Street Fighter formula. As a result, fights take place one-on-one over a best of 3 rounds. In terms of features that make the EX series unique, besides the jaggedy polygons themselves, the games do offer their own bespoke fighting system. Street Fighter Ex2 borrows many of its fighting mechanics from its game's predecessor, which in many ways appears to be modelled off of Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter Alpha. This includes the characters having the ability to perform special moves and super combos. Unique to this game though was the feature known as the Super Meter, a gauge with 3 separate sections rather than levels. Street Fighter Ex2 also features the return of the guard break, another technique that would debut within the EX series. The guard break is a move that, if it connects with the blocking opponent, it breaks the block and makes the opponent dizzy. The guard break can be used at any time with 1 level of the Super Meter. This differs from the guard breaks in the Alpha series, as that technique results in creating an opening rather than a stun. Another mechanic from the EX series is known as Super Cancelling. This allows a player to string multiple super combos together for monumental damage. Now completely new to Street Fighter Ex2 was a feature known as XL combos, which are similar to custom combos found within the Alpha series. XL combos allow players to connect a series of basic and special moves for a limited time. During an XL combo, the player begins with a basic move and can follow up with a different basic move or follow up a basic move with a special move, which can be followed by a different special move. However, the player cannot connect any move with the same move, nor can they cancel special moves into basic moves during an XL combo. It's all very complicated. So all in all, the things that make this game different to the original Street Fighter EX games are more polished graphics, a slightly different roster, new stage backdrops and the introduction of the XL combo technique. The game did not innovate a great deal really from the previous Street Fighter EX games. However, in typical Street Fighter fashion, there would of course be more than one iteration of Street Fighter Ex2. There is money to be made off of releasing fighting games with minor upgrades over and over again after all, as who doesn't love easy money? 15 months after the game's original arcade release, an updated version of the game would also see a release in the arcade, titled Street Fighter Ex2 Plus. In this new version of the game, changes to the title's fighting roster would occur. This would include Hayate being swapped out for Nanasi on the player select screen, who was originally just a secret character. M. Bison, Pull and Perma, and Darren, who were all characters from the first EX games but omitted from EX2, were back in EX2+. In terms of new fighters to the series, Sagat would make his debut in the Eureka fighting series, and we would once again get some completely new additions to the roster. EX2 would introduce Volcano Rosso, an Italian martial artist, and Aria, who is a young girl who is equipped with a large mechanical right arm. Amusingly, the game also contained a non-selectable character known as Bison 2. This boss character appears in a white uniform and has an unlimited amount of super meter energy. He gains 2 variations of his Psycho Cannon super combo and is able to charge them to twice their normal size. Scary stuff. A further combo technique is also introduced to the franchise, known as Meteor combos. These are basically more powerful versions of super combos, which can only be performed when all 3 sections of the super meter are filled up. Every character in the game has at least one Meteor combo. After the 2 arcade releases and variants of Street Fighter EX2, Street Fighter EX2 Plus would finally arrive in homes on the Sony PlayStation, first in Japan in December 1999 and throughout many other regions of the world throughout the year 2000. The PlayStation release of the game would include an arcade, versus and practice mode, 3 features that remain standard tropes for fighting games. In addition to these though, the game would also include Satellite Smashing, which was a bonus game, and Director's Mode where you could record your fighter doing his or her moves, then edit the film after the recording. This version of the game would also feature the return of Hayate, but this time as a secret character. As you can see, apart from some graphical updates, new characters and a few new techniques, this EX2 game did not really build that much more on what was already available in the first EX games. However, this is just my opinion. Let us see what the journalists of the period made of Street Fighter EX2 Plus, the final rendition of EX2. Looking at GameSpot's take on the game, they would draw a similar conclusion to myself, stating that while EX2 Plus adds a few features and some new characters to the mix, it doesn't really have the overall flair that made the first game stand out. Graphically, EX2 has a more smoothed over look than the first EX did. While it does look a bit better than EX did, some players will likely miss the jagged yet defined look of EX. The effects have been bumped up a notch or 2, and super combos really explode off the screen as a result. Overall, EX2 is more of an upgrade to the original game than it is an entirely new experience. It looks very good and plays well, but it doesn't add enough new features to interest anyone that has become bored with the original. Don't expect the originality and freshness that the first game provided. IGN, on the other hand, appeared to be a lot more impressed with the game than both GameSpot and myself, with their review tending to have a particular focus on the game's graphics. They stated that if you're going to take a successful 2D franchise into 3D, this is how it's done. Out of all of the 2D turned 3D fighters out there, EX2 is easily the prettiest. This sequel offers smooth edges and textures that, while not amazing, fit perfectly, yet again proving that less can mean more. Street Fighter EX2 Plus preserves the nuances of gameplay and graphics that have made the 2D title great, but adds a little innovation to the mix to make it a worthwhile purchase. In all these areas, this game shines. Head on down to your local video store and snag a copy. If it floats your boat, don't wait any longer. Nag the game for extended play at home. In regards to IGN's review, I suppose they were right. The graphics featured in the game were certainly decent for the time. However, let us be frank here. Looking at this game with 2019 eyes, they now look pretty ugly, and as a result the game has aged nowhere near as either Marvel vs. Capcom or Street Fighter Alpha 3, which I guess would be the first of many reasons why people are more likely to talk about or revisit those games today than they are the likes of Street Fighter EX2. Apart from the graphics looking less appealing today, the very concept itself is less appealing too now. Street Fighter EX2 is just one of many games featuring the Street Fighter roster. There are many beautiful 2D games, many that define the fighting game genre itself. Then there are multiple ambitious crossover fighters that brought characters together who we never in our wildest dreams imagined sharing the same small screen. Street Fighter Ex2, although it has a lot of merits, simply isn't as memorable as the other games from 1998. Even within its own EX series, the game probably achieved the least out of the trilogy, as the first game introduced us to the series, and the next game, which we shall look at soon on the channel, Street Fighter Ex3, brought the 3D Street Fighter franchise to a next generation console. The whole EX series seems to be largely swept under the rug since the release of Street Fighter 4, the first 3D Street Fighter game developed by Capcom themselves using 3D polygons. I guess this is mainly down to the fact that Eureka owned the rights to all of the new characters that would debut in the EX series, meaning that none of them would resurface in other Street Fighter games down the line years later, like the majority of other fighters from the Street Fighter universe. Despite this though, Eureka EX fighters still live on, however in a slightly more niche capacity than the very mainstream Street Fighter. Their presences would live on in Fighting Layer, a fighting game franchise developed by Eureka after the EX series, which we shall also eventually get to covering on this channel. So EX3, Street Fighter 4, Fighting Layer, more Capcom vs games. I still have so much more Street Fighter history to cover on this channel. So for this reason, I strongly advise you to subscribe, as I release new videos in this fighting game series every single Thursday without fail. So if you do not want to miss out, hit the subscribe button now. I also love to hear your feedback, so let me know your thoughts on today's video within my comments section. Finally, my channel is partially funded by the generous donations I receive via Patreon. Patrons can earn a credit and a shout out at the end of this video. These people make working full time on YouTube just that little bit less scary. So I would like to thank you all very much for that. So a huge shout out now to Carl Johnson, JD Robbins, Sebastian Veles, Synth Spaces, Andrew Bazansky, Asobi Kwang DX, Michael Baker, Tom Elliott, Computer Man, Antonio Rodriguez, Craig Jenkins, Daniel Daly, RetroReversing.com, and all of my other patrons. Yeah! Cheerio!